Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Real Talk with Rick. So I think this is an interesting episode. We bring in Kathie Case, who's the president of the Eden Prairie Historical Society. And Kathie, actually, what happened here is Kathie, you'll learn by listening, is pretty much up to speed and knowledgeable in all aspects of the history of Eden Prairie and the Eden Prairie community. And at some point, I think it would be great to have her back to get more detail and background on her and many aspects of the history of the city. But we focused in on this particular episode on a piece of a radio interview that she found from 1973 that involved Pappy Grill, Martin Grill, related to the Cummins-Phipps-Grill House. So we spend our podcast talking a little bit about the background of that property, and then we're going to share with you the radio interview from 1973. So our focus is on that topic. So here is my conversation with Kathie Case and our conversation about Martin Pappy Grill. Kathie Case with the Eden Prairie Historical Society. Thank you for visiting with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's great. This podcast, this episode is about this wonderful radio interview that you found from 1973 that we're going to play a little bit later. It's the focus of our podcast, but I want to be able to set the stage for what people are going to hear. So if you don't mind, could you kind of lead us through a little bit of history as our city's history expert? I'll call you our city's history expert. That's what I call you, our city historian, and lead us up to what people are going to hear.
Sure. Well, this is the story of the Cummins-Phipps-Grill homestead that's owned by the city of Eden Prairie, and the Historical Society has a lease agreement with the city, and we work really hard to provide the home to our community through rental, through events. We let the nonprofits use the home for meetings and events and parties, whatever would help them. And it's an important little gem in our city. And it all started back in 1851 with David Livingston, who was the first person to preempt land in Eden Prairie. And ironically, there it is, right there on that spot, right up on the bluff, came by riverboat, settled up there, bought the land for $1.25 an acre, and had 280 acres. And in 1956, he sold that land to John Robert Cummins, who came here from Pennsylvania as a 21-year-old who had never farmed in his life. And he purchased the land for $13 an acre. And there he had all this property, had no idea what to do. He was a smart man. He'd been educated in Pennsylvania. He was of Irish descent. He married Martha Clark, and she came from New Hampshire. She was down at St. Anthony with her family, and they met and they got married at the Ard Godfrey House, which was common back then. It was the only place to really go in St. Anthony. And they settled in a cabin, and the cabin was their home for over 20 years. It was across the street on Pioneer Trail where Elliott Aviation is today. And they lived there for 20 years in the cabin with no children, lots of nieces and nephews from the city that would come out and help. And he was a horticulturist, and that actually is the reason that the house is on the National Register since 1982, because J.R. Cummins was an amazing experimental horticulturist with apple trees, all kinds of cherry trees, plum, grape, everything you can imagine. And most of it, the orchards were on that side of Pioneer Trail, which is the south side, where the airport is today. And then about 1978, he started to build his beautiful brick home, and there's over 30,000 Chaska yellow bricks that he hauled back and forth by horse and buggy. And he took butternut trees that were on the property in a grove across the street, and he used that and created trim and doors and everything out of butternut from his own property. The floors were beautiful oak and pine floors. And the home was pretty much built by J.R. as he was working on his orchards. He also was a wheat farmer, and he was very involved with the community. He was known to walk to Minneapolis, walk there in a day and back. He also kept diaries. We have over 60 diaries that he kept over the years that he lived in the home. He does mention neighbors periodically when they're helping with rushing or they're building Pioneer Trail. They're creating the roadbed. And there were several farmers along that way that he was good friends with. There was the good old Goodrich Hotel right there. There was the Goodrich farm, and also the post office was right there. That's where people tended to go to celebrate together. But anyway, he built this beautiful home. It took him a couple of years to do it. I do want to mention one thing that's kind of humorous. In the diary, we searched through everything, trying to find more personal information because he loves to talk about the weather and how his crops are doing and how things are working when he's doing the grafting.
Just detailing the day.
Yeah, detailing the day. The day. And once in a while mentioning a neighbor. But he talks about his wife, the day that they married, and the day that she died. And that's it. Nothing else on Maddie. Maddie herself was a pretty amazing woman. She did beautiful stencil work that is still in the home today. She painted pictures of Eden Prairie, which we've never been able to find, but we know that they were on the walls. She loved her plants in the window, in the south window, bay window. She was a pianist, an organist. She led the town plays. She was very, very involved. So then, in about 1908, after Maddie died, J.R. decided to sell the property, and he sold it to Edwin and Harriet Phibbs in 1908. And they had 2 children, Mildred and Helen. And they moved into the home from North Minneapolis. They had been from the Boston area, both educated. I believe that Harriet went to the S.S. Curry School back in Boston, and she'd been a teacher in Stillwater. And Edwin was a real farmer. He knew what to do. Now, going back to J.R., I want to say his years at this home were extremely successful. He had never farmed. He knew nothing about it, and he figured it out, and he was very successful. So getting this farm at $50 an acre now in 1908, he also bought an additional 380 acres, and he decided to plant asparagus. So the entire property that is Mac today, the airport, was covered with asparagus. Now, their property went from Starring, the south of Starring, all the way down to the river. So they had a lot of land, a lot of beautiful wooded areas, which every farmer in Eden Prairie had their wooded area. And he farmed this asparagus, and he became known as the king of asparagus for Hennepin County. And they would deliver it to the farmers market in Minneapolis every Saturday. And, of course, originally horse and buggy, later with cars and trucks. And the children were involved as well as many other relatives. And he did very well, was very, very prosperous, and so prosperous he needed to add on to the house. So he added on a new kitchen for the hired men, a new upstairs for hired help, which is all still there in the house. And Mildred was very involved, and she helped start the grill market. And that was up on Old 169 and Pioneer Trail. And they sold coffee, hamburgers, a lot of their products that they were growing. And also, Harriet decided to plant peonies. She'd go to the market. She met the Oriental farmers that were there. She fell in love with the peony plants. And it's over 100 years old today, and there's over 500 peony plants there at the lawn of the Cummins-Phipps-Grill House that we're really proud of, and the city's really proud of it, too. They do a beautiful job with that garden. Mildred married Pappy Grill in 1934. Now, let's get to Pappy. He's an interesting guy. So his name is Martin Grill. He grew up in Minneapolis. And the story is he grew up in a family of 12 children. And around the time he was 11 or 12, it was a little crowded at home. And he knew he wanted to be a farmer. He didn't want to live in the city. So he took the train, headed west, and he landed in Eden Prairie at the Eden Prairie Depot. The story is he fell asleep under a tree. Woke up, it was evening, he'd missed the train west, and he was starving. So he goes over to the Miller store, which is right on Eden Prairie Road where Miller Park is today. Goes in there and he steals a loaf of bread because he doesn't have any money. And Kate Miller catches him. And she says, well, you're going to be working for me for a while to pay for that bread. So lucky him, he got to live with the Miller family for a while, help at the store, get to know the land, get to see what he wanted to do. He ended up down in the river bottoms and worked with the local Dakota Indians that were still living down there, which is today Seaver Peterson's land down in the river bottoms. So he lived down there for a while, farmed, loved it, came up and started working for different farmers as a hired man. And he started working for Harriet and Edwin Phipps, got to know the daughter Mildred. And in 1938, after he'd been married to Mildred for 4 years, they purchased the farm from her parents. And that's the story. So he had been in Eden Prairie for a long time and had worked on her farm since 1928. So 10 years later, it becomes his farm.
Absolutely. And you really, that was a great job setting the stage and a great job placing all these locations because, as you said, the Cummins-Phipps-Grill House on Pioneer Trail across from the airport with the Peonies Gardens and the house that's still there and the house that the city, as you said at the very beginning, that the city owns and that the Historical Society helps maintain and host events is the one that everyone's familiar with today.
True, yes.
And so when you took us from the late 19th century up into when did they get married? 43?
34.
34. 34. You received, someone sent to you a radio clip from 1973 of Martin, Pappy Grill, calling into a radio station in Boston, of all places, right? So we're about to play that, but really quickly, how did that radio interview get to you?
It got to me through our website, www.edenprairiehistory.org, and our Jim Clark, retired police chief of Eden Prairie, has been on our board, and now as an honorary board member, he manages our website. And he sent it to me right away, and I just couldn't believe what I was reading from Jonathan Higdon, sending this to us. He loves to listen to these old shows. I'll talk more about him after you listen, but he did send it to us because he thought we might be interested in knowing that this existed. And yes, we're really excited. None of us had ever known Pappy Grill. He died back in 1975. And, when I first joined the Historical Society in 88, of course, Helen Holden Anderson was the president at that time, and she knew the family really well and would talk about them fondly. But I had never known the family, so it was really, really special to hear his voice.
Yeah, it's really neat, and even I, someone who's not as connected to all that history and detail, when you sent that my way and I listened to it, I thought it was great, and I think that we're going to play it right now, and then we'll come back afterwards and talk a little bit about what we heard.
Thank you.
254-5678, you're on WBC. Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I speak to your announcer?
One moment, please.
Yeah, I'm calling from a Mid-Eastern state.
What state?
Minnesota.
Oh, one moment, please.
Hey, Larry, Minnesota.
Hello, WBZ, you're on the air. Hello?
Yes, I just wanted to let you know that I'm way back here in Minnesota, just out of the Twin City area.
Yes, would you turn your radio off, please?
Yeah, there. It was your program that I had on.
That's
and
right.
I was very much surprised to think that way from Boston, I picked it up as clear, just as clear as a local station.
Yes, sir. Well, at night, our signal goes way out.
Yes, it does. And I listened to your Snake Man, and I listened to the gun club, or the nightclub operator.
Yeah, what did you think of the Snake Man? You're a first-time caller, too, so I always
that's the first time I ever called.
I always give my first-time callers a little round of applause to make them feel that they're part of the group. What did you think of that LZ Priest?
Well, if he wants to believe it that way, that's fine and dandy.
Yeah.
When I was a young man, I got bit by a snake, and the old-timer put gunpowder inside of the fire, and it was damn painful.
I can imagine. But you lived.
I lived. I didn't get any infection. The pain disappeared in a couple of days. But I don't want any rattlesnakes around my neck.
Yeah, you don't want that kind of religion.
No.
Where was this, up in Minnesota?
I'm just outside of Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah. What do you do for a living?
Me, I'm a farmer by profession.
What do you raise?
Soybeans and corn. I used to be a general vegetable man and cattle and beef and hogs, but I quit it all here about 4 years ago.
Why?
Why? Labor.
I mean, you couldn't get proper labor?
Well, first of all, without proper labor, and the prices were at that time too damn high. You couldn't make it go. You just couldn't see it. So therefore, I thought this way, rather than go to the poorhouse trying to pay out wages, I better quit the business.
Now, how long were you that type of farmer?
I've been on this place since 1928, continuously.
And you had beef cattle?
Sir? Oh, yes, I had milk and beef and hogs,
Right.
and about 600 acres of vegetables, of which 84 acres were asparagus.
And you made most of your money in the vegetables, right?
Well, it was in the vegetables, yes.
Now, how do you, where do you get the people to help you,
I'm only 15 miles out of Minneapolis. It was all transient labor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How does it work? You know, I've never seen I have friends of mine who are on the fruit and vegetable business. They're wholesalers. I mean, they buy them from you people, I guess, and then
the middleman.
The middleman, and then the supermarkets, the people come and they buy them from them at this warehouse.
That's right.
Now, how does that work? Now, you get it. How do you package it up, and how do you sell it, and to whom do you sell it?
Well, I sold it. It was asparagus. You guys do a lot of flyers. In some of the chain stores, such as Safeway, National Tea, Kroger's, and Red Owl, and those, because I was an awful large supplier. 300 to 400 acres of vegetables, plus about 84 acres of asparagus.
Now, how'd you pick this asparagus?
Well, each and every stalk is cut with a knife individually.
Holy, I thought, yeah, that's interesting.
Like the old song says, bend down, sister, bend down. If you don't have a good back, you can't be a good asparagus cutter.
Each stalk is cut individually.
Each stalk cut individually.
I wonder how many people know that. I thought, that's why I was asking about it, but I had no idea how time-consuming. Now, then what do they do? After they cut the stalk, then what?
Cut the stalk, the cutter lays it down the pile. Then the pickup man comes along, puts it in boxes, gets it into the packing shed, and there it's bunched by hand for this local market. Sometimes we bunch it with a machine for shipping. Then it's got to be trimmed, put into water pans, and ready for delivery.
By Joe. And then it goes to other people, and they bottle it and put this...
Yeah, then of course, the local people here just sell it as a bunches as we prepare them for them.
Now, your cost, this is interesting. Now, from your place, what would you say that, I know that you're a big distributor of asparagus, but what would you, let me see, how do you sell it? By the case or by the pound? Or?
Well, it was sold for bunch per pound. There had to be a minimum. And 6-inch stocks had to be a minimum of a half pound on the large state ball.
Now, and how would you sell it?
It would actually average about 1 pound bunch.
A 1 pound bunch. Yeah. Now, what would you get for that? What would you
well,
get?
When I quit, the most I ever got for a 1 pound bunch would be about 7 cents.
7 cents, all right.
Yeah, that'd be 84 cents per dozen.
All right, 7 cents. Now, what would that same bunch, by the time it'd get to the supermarket?
Before I got through there, by the time I got it distributed, that cost me around 6 cents.
So you had 13 cents in there, right?
Yeah. Your margin was very, very small.
So you had 13 cents in it,
yeah.
in a pound bunch. Now, that same pound bunch, when it got to the shopping like this, I don't know, what would that go in the average supermarket for that same bunch?
At that time, it would go in the average supermarket about 12 to 15 cents per bunch.
Oh, wait a minute, I understand. Your cost was 13 cents.
Yeah, but sometimes we put that in supermarkets, they go from 12 to 15 cents. My cost, so they... So you mean per bunch now, or per dozen?
Yes, no, per bunch.
Per bunch. Oh, if they added 1 to 2 cents, that was the price.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, there's certainly not much profit in that, is
There
there?
was, and it's very perishable.
That's what, yeah, that was the next thing I was going to ask you.
Perishable foods.
Right, now, when do the crops grow? When do the asparagus crops grow?
Spring of the year. And when does it grow?
Yeah. I mean, when do you harvest it?
usually start here about the last week of April. And most years, and about the 20th to 25th of June was the end of harvest.
Now, after you did, that was your big income, the asparagus. What did you do as a farmer after that, like when the summertime came? What did you do then?
Well, then I grew grain crops and vegetable crops, squash, cantaloupe, watermelons.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like a good life.
Yeah, sure. If you can stand it.
What do you mean? What do you mean if you can stand it?
Well, it isn't every human being that's guts enough to hang on.
Well, it's hard work, isn't it? And long hours.
That is right.
But you're your own boss, and you do whatever you want.
Well, that is fine, and I was willing to set up a lot of young people in the asparagus business, and knowing what it is, they threw up their hands. So I just plowed everything up.
Isn't that interesting? You made it available for young people, and why
Made it available, and it's too much work.
Like, you take the average young person now, if you show them how to do this, what could they make in a year, on the average?
Oh, today, the way the asparagus market is, and naturally they'd have to put in the hours that we did, I would say on a 30-acre farm, asparagus farm, they could gross a net of 15 to 18,000 a year.
A net, they could do that?
Yeah.
And about how many hours a week would they have to work for that?
How many hours a week?
Yeah, on the
Work
average.
7 days a week, and mister, if it means 12 hours, you work 12 hours. If it means 14, you work, because Mother Nature waits for no man.
Yeah.
When you have a temperature of about 85 to 90 with the humidity up there, brother, you got to get out there and cut twice a day.
Now, how perishable are the asparagus? I mean, like, how soon do you have to cut them, and how much time do you have to cut them?
Well, if the shoots are more than 6 inches out of the soil, you better cut them, because the next day they'd be at such a height and become tough.
Right.
You wouldn't have the tender shoots.
The next day.
You bet.
Now, so what did you do? You say you dug up that whole property?
Oh, I plowed it all up, and we went in with private enterprise and developed an airport.
You developed an airport?
Yeah.
That's easier that way, right?
Well,
Well,
I don't know whether it's easier or not. I'm still farming, though, in soybeans and corn.
what are the people going to do for asparagus?
Well, sir, this community is so short. Your state of New Jersey out there furnishes more asparagus than we do now. The state of New Jersey has been the biggest asparagus supplier.
No, I had no idea.
And it's all moved down to Mexico now. Most of it's across the border. And I just read in the Wall Street paper here the other day that Del Monte is quitting their Mexican operation because the cost factor is too high.
You have to get cheap labor to pick that stuff, right?
Well, we paid by the bunch, we paid by the dozen, we paid by the pound. And somehow or another, you can only pay so much. In other words, you can only take so much out of the dollar margin. And when the profit don't come in for 2-3 years, it's about time you better put the brakes on.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to think of, you offered some young people this deal, and what kind of money would they have to invest to have taken that over?
Well, naturally, if they had to invest money around here, your land prices are such anywhere from $500 to $800 an acre for farmland, and it's you've got to have somewhat acid soil, fairly flat land. You can't have hilly or awful rolly or erosive land. As you know, a strawberry bed or anything like that has got to be quite flat. You've seen strawberry beds.
Yes, yes, I have.
And about the same with the asparagus fields here.
Well,
Yeah.
now it's 11 minutes before 2 o'clock. Farmers usually should be sleeping this time. They get up at 4 or 5. What are you doing up at this time?
Well, sir, I told you, I quit the whole shebang, and all I do is soybeans and corn. And right now I'm doing Uncle Sam's job.
What do you mean?
What I mean, income tax. Farmers have to file by February 15th.
Oh.
Yeah. And I file on a calendar year here. So my stuff has to all be ready and in the auditor's office and okayed before the 15th of February.
Now, what about you? You have children?
No, I do not.
I was wondering, what about how many people are going in agriculture up in that area?
How many in agriculture?
No, how many new people go into agriculture?
I don't quite understand.
Well, I mean, I was wondering if you had relatives. You don't have any children.
No, I've got lots of relatives, but not a damn one. Your 6 o'clock and payday, it looks too nice in the big cities.
Yeah, that's the point I wanted to bring out. How many people that were
I come from a big family of people. I'm a city boy that went to the country to become a farmer.
Well, how old were you when you did that?
My first appearance in the country when I was a dropout of high school, when I was a kid, 13, coming 14 years old.
Do you have any regrets about that?
Not a damn bit.
Sure. And right now, see, I'm a city guy, and so I keep looking to the country all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I want to thank you very much for giving us a buzz and giving us a lowdown.
It's been an enjoyable few minutes here. I just wish my wife was awake because we're both not kids. I came here 62 years ago.
From where?
I was a boy, coming 14.
Where did you come from?
Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just, I'm in a suburb of Minneapolis. But I just love farming, and that was it.
Well, that's great. I want to give you another round of applause. I want you to call again anytime. Thank you.
Maybe some evening, because my wife has a lot of kin right around Boston.
Oh, wonderful.
And the last time I was in Boston was 1916.
What were you doing here, selling asparagus?
No. 1916, you know what happened before World War I?
Right.
I was one of those fool kids that were all full of pep and vinegar.
Right.
And I believed in bell-bottom pants. And that's how I got to Boston. I've got quite a few kin around Brookline out there.
Oh, I live in Brookline now.
You do?
Yes.
Yeah, my wife's relatives are all just out of Brookline.
Oh.
And her folks are all down easters from Chalice and Milltown, Maine.
Oh, yeah.
And all up and down the coast. My wife's mother was a graduate of the Curry School in Boston.
Curry, I live right near there.
Is that a fact?
Yes.
Yeah, she graduated of the Curry School.
Yeah, that's in Milton.
That's right.
Yeah, when I was married, I lived right near there.
Yeah, it's a small world.
Yeah, what is your name in case there are people listening?
My name is Grill, G-R-I-L-L, called the Vegetable Grill Company.
The Vegetable Grill. What's your first name?
Martin F.
Huh?
Martin F.
Martin F. Grill. Well, Mr. Martin F. Grill, I want to thank you very much. And
yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you, but I just wondered how I got a hold of you. I just pushed the dial, and lo and behold, I heard Boston. I kept on listening, come through so clear as a bell.
Well, thank you, sir, and good luck.
You bet now.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night, sir.
Well, that was the voice, Pappy Grill, in 1973, calling into a Boston Larry Glick radio show. Real quick, I think, want to mention, we're not playing this earlier in the show. There was a segment about snakes that Pappy was commenting on. And then there are a couple moments that there was some kind of fading in and out of probably just someone had to adjust the antenna on the radio. But that was interesting, Kathie, wasn't that?
It really is. It's fascinating. And I had heard stories about Pappy Grill being a very eccentric person. He would get on his tractor, put the headlights on, and work in the middle of the night out in the fields, carrying a pistol with him. He was a very kind man. However, all of his nephews that I have met talk about when they worked for him in the summer, they would be hungry and they would maybe just grab an apple, and he'd say, "I'm cutting your wages on that, that apple."
Well, he knew the price of asparagus, and he knew how much he could get, how much it would sell for. He seemed to have that all down, as I think most farmers do.
Right. He'd been at it a long time, and this was his livelihood. And he cared about that farm a lot. We see that, the fact that it's still here.
Yeah.
And it's in such great condition. One story I wanted to mention about Pappy that I heard about from one of his nephews. He was out, in the woods, and he killed a raccoon. And then he realized that he'd killed a raccoon mother that had a baby. And his soft heart took the baby in, and he bottle fed that baby raccoon named Timmy. And Timmy lived with him for 10 years as a dog. And when he would be out on the tractor, Timmy would sit on his shoulder. And he trained Timmy. He had a stool by the kitchen door. And when Timmy had to use the bathroom outside, Timmy knew how to turn the door handle and another stool on the outside to let Timmy back in.
Really?
And this is a true story.
Really?
For over 10 years, Timmy, the raccoon, was his beloved pet. And I think it just kind of shows you what a heart that he had. He also, in the 1960s, donated Eden Prairie police officers their very first uniform, and there were 2 of them at the time.
Sure.
In the 60s.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people that would go down 169 and Pioneer Trail that were homeless. And there's one particular one that he took into his home, and this person wanted to become a minister, so he actually funded his education. And that minister is the one who did when he passed away, actually did a service when he passed away in 1975.
Wow.
And he did a lot of paintings, oil paintings, and we do have a few of those at the house still to this day. So I think his voice is so wonderful to hear because it's so kind. It's a soft, kind voice, and it's exactly what I would have pictured him to sound like. I want to get back to this Jonathan Higdon that actually sent this to us on our website. I did give him a call, and I found out that he listens to these often, and he's a voice trainer, and he really enjoys the announcers that are doing the interviews and a lot of the limericks for a lot of the advertisements he enjoys as well.
For the older radio shows.
Yeah, for the old radio shows. He loves that. And he didn't know anything about Martin Grill, what happened to Martin Grill, what happened to his home, where was it. And so when he reached out to us, we wrote back to him. We sent him pictures, a timeline, all kinds of information about Pappy and Mildred Grill. And he was just absolutely thrilled to hear that this house is still standing. So when I talked to him, he said, it's so interesting to think about where he was sitting in his kitchen with his radio. And I said, and the table he was sitting at is still there. It's still the original table. We still have the old radio. We still have it in the house. And he just thought that was incredibly wonderful. And a neat thing to know about Jonathan, he and his wife just inherited farmland in Oklahoma from her family. And they're going to start their own heritage farm. And so he just really connected with the story. He listens to all of them, and he said he's never heard Larry Glick stay on the line so long with one person, that he was captivated by Pappy and his story.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good 15 minutes.
Right.
And there's a story before and there's a story after. Actually, we're gonna end the podcast on kind of playing out a few minutes of what happens after Pappy Grill hangs up. But I assumed when you emailed that around that the interview was found by someone here in Eden Prairie, someone someone we know, but lo and behold, it's an enthusiast of these types of shows from Oklahoma.
Yeah, and a young guy.
A young guy. A young guy, absolutely. And then that you're able to send that information related to the fact that the house is still standing and the gardens are there, and it still has, adaptive reuse. It's got a life of its own still. That's great.
And everybody that's ever been connected with that house, that's worked on this house, which have been hundreds of people, everyone loves this house. There's something about it. It's got a happy, cheerful feeling in the house that you can tell. This was a happy house with all 3 families. They loved it. They cherished it. Did a lot of work on it, and as we are continuing to do so today. But it's really important to the Historical Society to share this house with people. And unfortunately, with COVID, it's been a little bit harder. We still have the optimists that they're going to be selling their Christmas trees, but Santa's canceled this year. I think he'll be on Zoom. And we hope next year to really show everybody the house. We've been working on the upstairs where the family actually lived for the very first time in 25 years. So we're really excited about that and to share that with the community. And this will tell even more stories about the 3 families and where they slept and lived.
It is. It's a great story. And I think a lot of people are really familiar with the Smith Douglas Moore house because of Smith Coffee being there. And so that's pretty well known, and we could probably do a whole podcast on that property in the future. But this particular house is something that we wanted to highlight for this episode, and knowing that there's still a lot happening there. Still a lot that you and the society do there. It's great.
Yeah, we love it. We absolutely love it.
Yeah. So we'll have you back on, I'm sure, at a future podcast to talk about some of the other properties in Eden Prairie, Kathie. But thank you for finding this, and thank you for sharing the background.
Oh, thank you. We're excited about this. It's really been a fun find, and you learn with history. You think one thing is true, you find out something else about as you go along, and we've learned so much from this, and we really are appreciative for him sending this information to us.
We are. Well, and thank you for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you.
It's 8 minutes before 2 o'clock, 254-5678. Hello?
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 Yes.
Yes.
Is this Larry Glick?
Let me check. Yes.
Hi, Larry. How are you doing?
Hi there. Great, thank you.
Hey, you're looking good.
I feel good.
Hey,
Hey.
this is the first time I ever called you.
Nice to have you with us.
I'm a little nervous.
Well, I am too.
Larry, I wanted to tell you, first time I called, right?
Yes.
I was going to tell you,
Take your time.
about people spitting on squirrels in the common, but I changed my mind about that. Did you know about that?
No.
It's apparently a new thing,
What is it now?
Haven't you seen any of the people in the common doing that?
Doing what?
Spitting at the squirrels.
No, I'm spitting at the squirrels.
It's really something you would want to see. But anyway, Larry, I wanted to tell you.
What sort of people would spit at a squirrel?
Well, I don't want to say this, but it's college students mostly.
College students spit at squirrels.
Yeah.
Now, easy, kid. Where did you ever see a college student? How did you know he was a college student? Did they have books?
They have long hair and everything, stuff like that.
That doesn't mean anything. A person has long hair.
You know these kids, Wait till I get out of my sleeping bag here.
Where are you now?
I'm at my apartment.
You sleep in a sleeping bag?
It's cold tonight. We don't have any heat in the apartment.
Where are you calling from? What?
Brighton.
Huh?
Brighton.
There's no heat in the apartment?
No. He turns it off in the middle of the night to save money.
Oh yeah. Well, don't you have a bed?
Well, I have a mattress.
What? Hey, tell me about yourself. You sound like an interesting experiment yourself. Do you live who lives with you?
I live with another college student who goes to Northeastern.
Right.
His name's Richard. He's sleeping now, but he just woke up.
Oh.
He's putting on the headphones to listen.
Hi, Richard.
The stereo.
Okay.
You want me to turn this up a little bit?
No.
Okay.
Where do you go to school?
I go to Emerson College.
You, son. That's where I went.
Is that right? I was going to ask you that.
Yes.
You really do?
I really did.
You really did?
Yes.
What year did you graduate?
Oh, I won't tell you. It's a long time ago.